Hi everybody, this is Warren Herman, and so today what we're going to speak about are some strange arguments for the Catholic faith. So what I want to share with you today are ways of really coming to understand which church is true. When somebody comes to an understanding that there is a God, and then to an understanding that Christ is God, one needs to come to an understanding of which church is Christ's church. And today I'm going to share some arguments with you that are going to help you think about this in a new way. These arguments are strange arguments, and I view these as some of the weirdest arguments. I mean, they're not super weird, but they're weird symbolic arguments that are also arguments that we could say are arguments for the validity of the Catholic Church from two factors. One is from the inconvenience of its teachings on some certain matters. So it would be, there's not a good reason for it to have these teachings. I mean, you can make some arguments, but they're so inconvenient that they probably wouldn't really fly. These are inconvenient teachings and also unique teachings, and that these teachings, which are both unique and symbolic of something else, give us a type of evidence, a type of symbolic evidence of Catholicism being the true church. So what am I talking about here? So in the scriptures, St. Paul talks about the mystery of Christ and the church, and links the mystery of Christ and the church to the nature of marriage, this commitment between male and female. And so the scriptures that make it very clear that we can view marriage as a kind of symbolism of the covenant between God and man, that the faithfulness in marriage is an echo of the faithfulness of God to his people. And so this type of understanding, this iconography of marriage, is something that is in the scriptures. So if we do come to the conclusion that, we believe in the scriptures, we believe in Christ, we can then come to this real experience of, realizing that if marriage is symbolic of the covenant between God and man, what do the views of different Christian groups and what they have to do with their view of marriage, what does this say about whether they are the true bearer of that covenant between God and man? What does it say about, what do they say about the faithfulness of husband and wife? And how does this reflect what is likely about which one of these has stayed faithful or is the covenant through which God is faithful to humanity? Which one is unbroken? And so here, we see the inconvenience and the uniqueness of Catholic teaching. So Catholicism is largely unique and inconvenient in that it proposes to humanity the indissolubility of marriage. There are cases, of course, somebody might say, where the Catholic Church grants what is called an annulment. But an annulment is not a Catholic divorce. It is the declaration that a marriage did not, in fact, exist. And what this means is that, so for example, let's say that let's just make up a story that makes no sense here. Let's say that there is let's just say that a guy meets a girl online. And let's say that she actually is let's say that she's actually a married woman, and she dresses up in a wig, and she looks like something else. She makes a fake birth certificate, and she pretends that she's someone else, and then they go to church. Let's just say somehow she manages to falsify everything, and they get married. But she's really already married to someone else. She doesn't even exist as a separate person. She makes up this whole identity, and it's all fake. Just making up a silly story here. So let's just say this manages to occur, And so now the guy says, oh, but she's fake. She's not even a real person. It comes out there's a big fraud. So he's actually not married to her, nor is she married to him, because she committed a fraud, and it's not like she doesn't even exist like as this separate person, and she's already married to someone else. So the marriage, although they went to church, although they did the ceremony, the marriage doesn't exist because it's not valid. It's not real. So I'm just giving a silly example of how a marriage could be conducted but not exist. And so there's a lot more that could be said. I'm just giving a silly example to make it an obvious example of how a marriage would not in fact have come into existence, although you did the marriage ceremony at the church. So Catholics do acknowledge that there is a possibility of an annulment when it's clear that their marriage did not actually come into being, but marriage is viewed as indissoluble. So there's no such thing in Catholic teaching where there's a permission to remarry. There are, as far as I understand things, there are some permissions in extraordinary circumstances to engage in, like, as far as I understand this, and this could be incorrect, there seems to be permissions for like engaging in like civil types of types of separation, and as far as I understand it, divorce in a civil sense in cases of emergency and stuff like that. But there's never a sense in which is ever understood that implies that there is any kind of real divorce. It's just maybe some type of a legal concept for convenience or for some type of a need to protect children or something like that. For a serious, reason, that might be permissible. So the thing is that, but in general, there is no such thing as a real Catholic divorce. It's not possible. It's not theologically possible if there's been a valid marriage. So this is a unique and inconvenient teaching, because also the Catholic Church prohibits separated and married people to remarry. So this is an exceptionally inconvenient teaching. So this is uniquely inconvenient. It goes against human sensibilities, which going against human sensibilities and convenience means that it is likely that this is not something that humans devised, because it is exceptionally difficult. And this teaching this Catholic teaching about divorce, somebody may also say scripturally, is this really based in scripture? Because Jesus seems to give this prohibition. He seems to say except for fornication. There's this line. But the thing is that this type of understanding, you can do a good study on this. There's some good apologetics resources and information from people like Carlo Brossard, Catholic Answers, and they talk about how Jesus is speaking about different, he's kind of referencing different opinions of the rabbis from his time, and is saying something quite similar to the kind of bizarre scenario I gave for the annulment. Like he said, like you can kind of, it's like, and there's different understandings of, it's basically he's saying, like, so for example, like you can't marry your cousin or weird things like that. Like, so it's like that's kind of there was understandings that's kind of included under this, that kind of escape clause, that seeming escape clause that you might point to try to refute this scripturally. It doesn't seem to be actually implying that when you study the context of this scripture, and also, I'm sure that you also would not find, this in its traditional interpretation among the early Christians. So there's this understanding that we see that in Catholicism we see this very unique, inconvenient teaching. We see this very unique, inconvenient teaching, which says that male and female, bound in matrimony, it's indissoluble. And I'm sorry for, I don't have the exact words for talking about that scriptural passage, but I did do study on this thing, and there's, it's understandable. So you can look up those resources from Catholic Answers. Especially there was a talk by Carlo Brossard on this. I think that there's some longer talks as well about the indissolubility of marriage from a scriptural and traditional perspective, that you can avail yourself of, to really think about this issue more deeply. that'll give you more detail, that'll really help make sense of it more so. But the thing is that we want to see this metaphorical thing, that has this symbolic element, that if the Catholic Church is saying that there is a need for this unbroken faithfulness between spouses, what else does that say about whether it is the church that is the covenant through which God is faithful to humanity? It is likely that a church that, it would be logical to assume that a church that has not stayed together would permit divorce. So it is also likely that a church that has maintained the covenant, it is logical to say that a church that maintains the unbroken covenant says that the marital covenant cannot be broken. That is a logic statement based on the symbolism, the real symbolism of marriage, and also the ethical implications of this. So there is this way in which we see that this proposal of an indissoluble marriage signifies uniquely among in Catholic teaching that the Catholic Church is that which has not broken its bond of the true covenant between God and man. So that is what this symbolic nature of this teaching, this apologetic, this very strange argument for Catholicism being the true church, is that there is this unbroken that we are the unbroken covenant between God and man, because we do not say that male and female can break their covenant. So that is a way of looking at this. So, and we can see that that's an inconvenient teaching, and that it is likely to be of divine origin, as is the Catholic Church. It is going to be seen as of divine origin because it is inconvenient. It does not seem like a human would want this as a thing. Another argument that I want to make here, which is similar to this first one, is another unique and inconvenient teaching of the Catholic Church. This is the prohibition on the use of contraception. This teaching, too, is an exceptionally inconvenient teaching. The only way that someone could view this, I think, as far as I can tell, as a kind of convenient teaching is you could say, okay, well, the Catholic Church wants you to have as many children as possible because it wants more members. The problem is this teaching is so unpopular that nobody would stay in the Catholic Church. So there's no way that this is able to achieve this kind of worldly aim, because most people will simply just leave the Catholic faith rather than stay in it. You're not going to convince as many people to have 10 children as you are simply going to have people leave the church. So you are not going to gain more members as a result of this teaching. So there's no worldly explanation for why this would be a good idea to promote as a teaching. So the thing is also that this is a unique teaching, because even among Father Callisto, Bishop Callisto Swear of the Orthodox Church, in his original version of the book Orthodoxy, I believe, wrote that the Orthodox Church is against contraception, but in the more modern version translation of his Introduction to Orthodoxy, it describes how if there's now some kind of there's like a wiggle room, you can consult with your spiritual father, to kind of know what's true and what's right in your case. And this is why I believe it's very critical that we believe the Catholic Church is true, because the Catholic Church means that, because here's the thing. I was trying to understand the nature of this teaching on contraception because I found it hard just simply to understand why this would be so. But it is, I think that there's I thought about this, like, does Christ's resurrection get able to be separated from his crucifixion? Does his life get, so the thing is, it's like, do his joys, do his glories get separated from his sorrows? And so there is a way in which, just like, in the prohibition on contraception ensures that the marital act is not separate from self-sacrifice. And because the cross of Christ is Christ's complete self-gift to humanity, holding nothing back. And contraception is, it is a calculated type thing. It holds back the potential for giving life. And so to understand the sacramental, because just like we spoke about marriage, the marital act is the symbolic sign, is the just like the Eucharist is the sign of the covenant between God and man. The marital act is the symbol of that sacrament between man and woman. It's like that's the. I mean, and I'm not using man in the same way in both of those. Using one as like the usual generic type of human, like God, the union between humanity and God is the Eucharist. The union between a man and a woman is the marital act. And so the thing is that in the Eucharist, Christ gives himself entirely in a way that is painful. And so the thing is, if we take out the danger, so to speak, of having a child, the danger of having another person to whom one will give themselves, Christ on the cross is fruitful in that he gives birth to the church through the blood and water which come out of his side. I mean, even we could argue that this is deeply symbolic even of the rib of Adam, giving rise to Eve, just as Christ gives rise to the church, and we can see the church as his bride. Of course, the symbolism is kind of mixed here, in different ways. But there's this beautiful way in which we see this necessity of suffering in the cross for Christ's glorification. And so the thing is that we have to understand that if we separate the marital act from the possibility of children, we have also removed its character as self-sacrifice, which is covenantal. And so the essence of this is that we see in the Catholic teaching on the indissolubility of marriage and the Catholic prohibition on contraception, these deeply covenantal themes, which make it clear that church which bears the covenant which is Christ's, which has not broken, which says you can't break the covenant between God and between a husband and wife, and you can't use contraception, means this is the church which bears the true covenant with God, because it does not break that covenant. It does not separate these things. It does not do these things, and therefore reveals its union with the sacrifice of Christ, and therefore is the bearer of this covenant. And so I hope that these arguments, although I've stumbled a bit in my words trying to make them, are something that you haven't thought about before, that makes you realize the uniqueness of the Catholic faith. That the inconvenience, because these are terribly inconvenient ideas. Why would a human want these things? They must be from God, because they don't make sense. They're not going to get you more members. They're not going to get you anything except people leaving the church on a worldly sense. But in a spiritual sense, they're going to require sacrifice, just like Christ sacrificed. So they point us as a powerful evidence that the Catholic Church is the true church. So I hope that this is an interesting video, that it gives you some food for thought, and helps you in your journey to understand ways of arguing for the truth and the beauty of our Catholic faith, so that we can make ourselves a gift entirely to God and other people. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope you have a great day.